Femi Abebefe hanging out here in downtown Las Vegas at the Circa Resort and Casino. Michael Lombardi out in the great state of New Jersey. We had a fun first hour. We got a fun second hour on deck for you guys as well. 15 minutes from now, Chris the Bear Fallica of Fox Sports, the Bear Bets podcast, will be joining us to give out his plays for today in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Then in 30 minutes, our buddy Jonathan Von Tobel, host of VSiN Primetime, which you can check out Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 Eastern time, will join us as well as he gives out some of his plays for the NCAA tournament. It's a big basketball day, big basketball weekend. At the end of the day, we'll be down to 16 teams for the national championship here in men's college hoops. And Michael, I wanted to start here with the college basketball scene because I do wonder here sometimes for these upset-minded teams, these teams that pulled off upsets in the first round. You get the quick turnaround, 1 day of prep, and then you're right back at it. Do you think that is more beneficial, or does that hurt these teams? Because especially in Oakland's case, we saw their coach, Greg Kampe, making the rounds for the interviews. I'm not saying that anybody was distracted, but, you know, there's a lot to be celebrated when you pull off one of those big upsets, but then you have to quickly shift your mind into, all right, next game, next play, like we got to go play a game in about 36 to 24 hours. How do you think these teams that pull off these upsets can kind of, I guess, turn the page and focus on the opponent that's coming up later on today?
Well, a lot of it is how did you win the game, right? I mean, how did you win that game? And I think to me, when you look at Oakland and they had their chances at the end of the game, right? I mean, Oakland didn't shoot free throws very well all through the tournament. I mean, they were able to beat Kentucky and didn't shoot well from the free throw line. But I think when you look at it, when you watch what Gecki was able to do week one, he the first game 10 for 20 from the 3-point line. This game, he's 6 for 17. So, he missed it, and there were some looks that were not great. They did a better job defensively on him, but, he was on fire. And I think if you win the game and you're the upset team, you upset, you made all these threes. Can you make those threes again, or is the norm going to come back to the medium, or are we going to come back to where you usually are? I think we saw that a little bit with Jake Gocke. I mean, he was able to played 42 minutes. He played a bunch of minutes the other game. And look, he just made 6 out of 17. He got 3 less shots and 4 less makes, and I think that ultimately was the difference in the game. North Carolina State did a nice job on him. So I think that's really what it is. I mean, they ended up shooting 12 for 35 from the 3-point line, and they didn't do that against Kentucky. So I think you have to take that into consideration. Like, for example, A&M. They played Houston early in the year in a kind of, I don't know what it was. It was at the Toyota Center in Houston. They lost by 4. But that A&M team offensively then to this A&M team now are completely different. A&M now, regularly scores above 80 points. I mean, the last 6 games, they've had 80 or more points in all of them, and most of them are getting into the 90s. They're shooting at a higher level percentage than they ever have. You feel nervous betting them because can they keep that up, or are they going to come back to the mean? That's where I get a little bit stuck. And so it's another game, and eventually your shooting percentage and eventually your talent shows up, and it becomes very difficult, I think. I don't think it's one of those, hey, we're playing great. Well, if you're playing great, you might be shooting great. Can you keep that shooting going? I don't know if you can.
Yeah, sometimes the shot variance can kind of masquerade how you're actually playing there. And that's what it is. The NCAA tournament is a tournament of variance. Who's making their threes, who's missing their threes, who's defending, and who can still play well when the shots aren't falling. Like, that's the biggest thing, because there's going to be a night where the shots don't fall. Can you survive that? Some teams, they can't do it if they're so reliant. Like, we talk about BYU against Duquesne to start Thursday. BYU, they shoot so many three-pointers, the shots didn't fall, and they had no plan B. They just said, I guess we're just going to keep shooting and we're going to keep throwing up bricks, and all of a sudden, now we're out of the tournament. See you later. It's the teams that have a plan B and C that are the ones that are ultimately able to kind of survive some of those cold shooting nights and progress throughout the tournament. Get this, Michael. Here's a fun fact. In 7 of the last 10 tournaments, we've seen at least one number 1 seed fail to make it out of the first weekend. Now, we already have one that's already made it through. We have 3 later on today with Houston, UConn, and Purdue. I just get the sense that one of these 1 seeds should be on upset alert. I don't know which one it is. It's easy to point to Purdue. Our producer Elliot, he's got his Zach Edey jersey on. You can't see him.
He's having a nice Sunday. Femi, don't destroy his Sunday. Come on, he's got hope.
I'm not destroying his Sunday, because I think it's more so Houston that should maybe be on the upset alert, just because of Texas A&M's guards. Those guys can get hot, but I think a lot of people would point towards Purdue just based on what their history has been under Matt Painter in March. Like, they have a a propensity to lose to double-digit seeds. Luckily, that Elliott said there's no more double-digit seeds left in our region, so we should be good to go. But that's kind of what the Purdue nature has been, and now they're an 11.5-point favorite today against Utah State out of the Mountain West.
Yeah, I mean, look, Purdue, I think one thing about when you've had all these people tell you the noise that keeps hitting you, eventually your team tends to focus with more clarity and more understanding, and you play to a higher level. Now, if Utah State shoots well and they do the things that they're capable of doing, which they did in the Mountain West, I mean, look, this is the 29th best offensive basketball team in terms of adjusted efficiency. I mean, that's impressive. Right? So you take all the teams in the league, in the country, and here's where they are. And they're good, defensively, they're 67th overall. But I think Purdue is going to, these games seemed like what I was watching as I watched Thursday through Saturday is eventually the better team wears the one team down, and they just can't seem to get it, right? They just can't seem to kind of close it down. And I think that should be the case against Utah State with Purdue. But like James Madison, I mean, that's going to be a fun game because James Madison's an older team. They've only lost 3 games, 2 to Appalachian State, but they play great defense. They defend the three-point line really well. They've got 2 legitimate older players that are the best players in the conference. So for me, when you watch them play, you say, okay, well, look, if Edwards and Bickerstaff play well, they can match up. And one thing we have learned through the tournament is sometimes when you're playing with a 24-year-old against an 18-year-old, even as talented as the 18-year-old is, the 24-year-old's body is more competitively ready to play than the young kid.
Yeah, and there's a good chance the 24-year-old has experienced the NCAA tournament throughout their college basketball career. Sometimes, like, the tournament is unlike any other thing. We said it in last week how the NCAA tournament or the season is like 3 different seasons. There's the regular season, the conference tournament, and the NCAA tournament. There's all 3 different seasons. It's a very, very unique event there, and it's kind of tricky if you've never gone through it here. And you bring up Duke, who James Madison is playing later on today. Duke, the way they ended the season was a little bit shaky. They lost the finality at home against North Carolina. Then they had a clunker in the first game of the ACC tournament. They were a part of NC State's run that now has them in the Sweet 16 as a bid stealer. I would say Friday evening when they were playing Vermont, it wasn't the most impressive showing. I thought that Vermont more so just got cold from the field versus Duke was really impressive in that game. This is kind of it's an interesting matchup here for the Blue Devils. Like Tim Murray said, and as you said, if they don't bring it today, they're going to find themselves in a really, really tight game against a team that pulled off a wire-to-wire job against Wisconsin Friday night.
Yeah, with a team with great confidence. I mean, they beat Wisconsin. You say, well, I mean, we know the Big Ten's a good conference, and they went in there. And I think to me, what we've learned and what Jay Wright was talking about after the Kentucky loss about, the talented young players are going to be better pros, but they're not necessarily going to be better collegiate players. And I think James Madison's team has played together. And, when you win 32 games over a course of a season and you have that ability to gain maturity, which is essentially what we're talking about, right? When you read all the books about how to unlock how great players unlock this, it really comes down to their quest for learning to improve. And that comes through maturity. And I think when you see these games, the focus of these older teams is more alive than the focus of the younger teams. And I think that's something that we kind of overlook because we hear powerhouse Kentucky, we hear powerhouse, North Carolina, and we just think that's going to be. But Grand Canyon will give all they can to Alabama today regardless because they have that ability to focus and concentrate.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that game. That's going to be, any game with Alabama, the pace is going to be up and down the court, and it's always going to be entertaining, at least from a visual standpoint. We'll talk some more college hoops coming up in the next segment. Once again, Chris the Bear Fallica will be joining us here on the Lombardi Line. But while we have a couple minutes left in this segment, Michael, we got some win totals from our friends at DraftKings in the NFL.
Yeah, I love
Never
it.
Too early to start taking a look at some of these win totals. The highest ones, the defending.
Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go right to your Dallas Cowboys. Because let's be clear, the Cowboys number is going to be inflated all the time, right? America's team, what's that number?
It's at 10.5. I looked at it.
I'm taking the under in a minute. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I'd take the under.
Are you kidding me?
I don't understand
Run to the window.
I don't understand it. Like the juice is toward the under. It's minus 120 if you want to bet the under there, under 10.5. But even then, like the juice wouldn't deter me on that one. I like
if it went to 10, I'd still bet the under. If it went to 10, I'm taking the under.
Yeah. They're hemorrhaging talent. They are.
I mean, if it goes to 10, I'm taking the under. I mean, they've not done anything this offseason. They're not. The miscalculation of their team is they're talented. They underachieved. No, they overachieved, and now they've lost a lot of guys. This is a reset year. It's a reset year. It looks completely like a reset year to me.
Do you think Philly just bounces back and wins the East, or can we get a surprise winner?
I mean, I think they are the best team. They seem to have added some pieces. We'll see what happens in the draft, which seems like it'll be a defensive draft for the Eagles. But yeah, I would say right now, if Hurts can get back to where he was, they stay healthy. Yeah, on paper they look like the best team right now.
Yeah, the Eagles win total is at 10.5 right now. And you see, as we started the offseason, Dallas was a bigger favorite to win the East, but that number has really condensed. Dallas now a plus 125 favorite. The Eagles right behind them at plus 135. So it's almost like they're co-favorites to win the NFC East. Commanders plus 70, the New York Giants 10-1. Yeah, I see this as a reset year for the Dallas Cowboys. 10.5, I think, is way too big of a number. We'll see how that progresses throughout the offseason. All right, Chris the Bear Fallica joins us next here on the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back. This is the Lombardi Line here on the DraftKings Network. Femi Abebefe, Michael Lombardi out in the great state of New Jersey. Second round of the NCAA tournament will conclude later on today. We'll be down to 16 teams. And help us break down the 8 games that we have on tap for today, joining us on the Progressive Line, the one and only Chris the Bear Fallica over at Fox Sports. Check out the Bear Bets podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also a part of the Big Noon kickoff in college football season. Bear, we appreciate you waking up with us here this morning. Before we get to the games, I want to ask you more of a macro question here, because 7 of the last 10 NCAA tournaments has seen a number 1 seed fail to get out of the first week, and we have 3 of them playing today: UConn, Houston, Purdue. Are any 3 of those teams on upset alert in your eyes?
I would think the only one, or the one that has, I shouldn't say the only one, the one with the biggest threat of losing is Texas A&M, because I know you could argue that trying to beat Houston at their own game is not the way to go. But the way Texas A&M can rebound and battle on the interior off the missed shots. Now, the other night was a complete anomaly. That was their best shooting night of the year, and they absolutely ran Nebraska out of the gym, who played no defense at all. But if A&M kind of regresses shooting-wise like you would think they would, and they're able to maybe get some offensive rebounds, maybe get some of Houston's big guys in foul trouble, they certainly could give Houston a game. I don't see UConn losing, and I don't think Utah State plays defense well enough to give Purdue a threat either. But if one of them's going to lose, I think it would be Houston.
How about Duke? I mean, they're playing James Madison, 31-3. James Madison defends the three-point line as well as anybody in the country. Got older players on their team, only lost 3 games. You still like Duke to kind of cover this 7 number. Is this because you think the trend has been to the favorites, or do you just think Duke is far superior?
I think Duke is far superior. I think if you watched that game the other night, James Madison just started off on fire. They got ahead, and that was certainly not a way Wisconsin was not constructed to be built to come back from that game. And I think if you look at Duke's guards, they're vastly superior to what JMU faced the other day in Wisconsin. So I think Duke's guards won't be as, I don't think in awe, but kind of, I think they'll be able to handle the James Madison pressure in a better fashion than what Wisconsin did the other night. It's funny, all going into the tournament, like Duke was like the least talked about top 4 seed going on, and here they are. They played great the other night, and now they're in a position to get back to the Sweet 16 and probably play Houston. But yeah, I think James Madison, obviously one of the more experienced teams in the tournament, but I do think the way Duke is built from the backcourt and then with Volkowski on the inside, I think Duke should be able to handle JMU.
Yeah, that number is down to 7. Their total 148.5. Duke taking on James Madison, 5:15 Eastern, 2:15 West Coast time over in Brooklyn. All right, we are hanging out with Chris the Bear Fallica here on the Progressive Guest Line here. Check out the Bear Pets podcast wherever you get your podcast. Let's get over to the game in Indianapolis between Colorado and Marquette. This will be the first game of the day. The Golden Eagles laying 4.5. A little bit hairy in the first half against Western Kentucky, but they went ahead and ultimately covered that game. Total 150. How do you see them matching up with Colorado later on today?
I mean, Colorado has got 3 pros in their starting 5. And I think what we've seen from Colorado in the first 4, they were able to win kind of an ugly game where maybe not everything was falling. And then against Florida, they were able to win a game where they're going up and down the course. So they're kind of built to win any type of game. And I worry a little bit about Marquette. I know Collick looked okay when he came back in that first round, but you've got to wonder if what we saw in the first half was kind of just general concern about Marquette, or if it was just kind of working yourself into the tournament, get the bad half out of the way, and then in the second half you play better. But Colorado was a massive step up in competition from Western Kentucky, so it would not surprise me at all if we're looking to see a 1 or a 2 lose. Like Marquette is the most likely one, obviously it's the shortest number of the 1s and 2s, but Colorado has got players with Simpson who I think can control the game. I took Colorado plus 4.5 in this game, so we'll look to get my day off with a nice loser like we ended it last night with the. It took 2 overtimes to beat me in the Oregon Creighton under 148.5, under by a million at the end of regulation, still under after first overtime, and it took 2 overtimes. That's the way my tournament's been going so far.
Well, how about Clemson? I mean, everybody, including me, thought that, this New Mexico team, and of course, when you're on the side of the public, it's not good. New Mexico was a public favorite. Clemson, a 6 seed. They weren't seeded correctly, and they dominated New Mexico from start to finish. So what do you think about, I know you're not playing this, but what do you think in this game in terms of playing Baylor, and how will they handle the Baylor Bears?
I actually had Baylor coming out of this region, so I hope Baylor does win, because I got some Baylor Sweet 16 and I got some Baylor Elite 8 and regional tickets as well. But I think we saw Clemson's guards play a great game against New Mexico in the first round. And it was more of what we saw when they had some bigger wins earlier in the year. Now, can they deal with the pace and the size and the shooting of Baylor? I don't know. The number's kind of low. Where the number is at 4.5 makes me believe that Clemson is the right side in this game. But it's funny, Michael. You said the public before, and that was like one of the games that the public has gotten wrong in the tournament. One of my buddies sent me a tweet this morning about how Bet Labs had sent something out about like games where the public has had like 65% or higher of the tickets. They're winning like 75% of the time. And I think we saw that yesterday with the favorites, like Creighton lucking out, North Carolina at a short number winning. Like the public, for the most part, has done very, very well this tournament with these sides. So we'll see ultimately if that does come to an end. At some point you would think it would, but it certainly makes people like me who tend to back underdogs like I did yesterday with Michigan State and some other games. It makes you kind of give you pause a little bit and be like, okay, is this going to be one of those tournaments where you ultimately get all of the top 3 and top 4 seeds through, or are we going to see a couple of upsets today?
Well, happy March for the recreational bettors out there. Going ahead and flush with cash here during the NCAA tournament. Let's go over to the Yale and San Diego State game. Yale, of course, pulling off that big upset against Auburn. I know for you have some Auburn futures. Bear, I mean, that's obviously an unfortunate situation there. But do you think that Yale can do it again now against San Diego State? The total is 129, so it's expected to be a lower scoring game here. They're catching 5.5 against the Aztecs.
It's one of those games where, like, if you're looking for an underdog to win, so a lot of times you want a contrasting style, and San Diego State certainly can play a slow-down game. But I like Yale in this game. I would play Yale plus the points. I think they do have a chance to win. That game against Auburn was amazing because their big guy Wolf was in foul trouble most of the game, and they managed to still play well and just hang within shouting distance before Auburn ultimately melted down in the final few minutes of the game, turning the ball over and just missing every shot. Like, I think Yale has a great chance because I'm not sure San Diego State is this great team. I mean, Leday made every single play when he needed to down the stretch against UAB. But the fact that UAB was in that game after San Diego State got up big, that concerns me. It's the second straight year, by the way, that San Diego State has drawn a 13 seed in the second round. So we'll see if they can capitalize today. But I like Yale plus the points here. It would not surprise me at all. I almost played Yale. Like, if I was looking for a third game to play today, it would be Yale plus the points.
Excuse me, Bear. How about Grand Canyon? Are you willing to take the 6 against Alabama?
No, Alabama is a team that I don't want to get in front of right now. It's like, is that we talked about before the tournament teams like with the highest, like the biggest discrepancy range of outcomes. And we're like, Kentucky could lose to Oakland or get to the championship game, and obviously they lost to Oakland. Alabama is in that same category, just the same type of team. They were just, that was like an NBA summer league game in the first round against Charleston, with teams just going up and down the floor, scoring basically no defense at all. I mean, give Grand Canyon credit. The other night against St. Mary's, they were the better team from the tip. They made a ton of shots. They also took a bunch of bad shots late in the second half, which kind of kept St. Mary's interested in the game somewhat. They can't do that. I don't think they can play that type of tempo today against Alabama and expect to come out ahead. I would lean Alabama in this game. I certainly wouldn't take a Grand Canyon because look, maybe the way you do it is, and again, people with the easy bettors will never tell you to do this. But it feels like one of those games that either Grand Canyon wins outright or you look up and it's like 100-70.
Yeah. No, it feels like that because it's based on how Alabama's putting up all those 3-pointers. They're hitting those shots like they did in the first round. Then it might be good night there for Grand Canyon. He is Chris the Bear Fallica. Check out the Bear Bets podcast wherever you get your podcast. Also a part of the Fox Big Noon Kickoff during college football season. Joined us here on the Progressive Guest Line. Bear, we appreciate the time, man, and good luck with the bets. We hope it's better than what happened to us yesterday and last night with that Oregon game.
So do I. Go Duke. I can't believe I'm actually saying that. Have a great day, guys.
He's slapping the floor like Wojo back in the day. All right, on the other side, Jonathan Von Tobel of VSiN Primetime joins us next here on the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Start betting smarter with a VSiN Pro subscription. All you have to do is sign up on a VSiN Pro annual subscription today. Get your first year for only $199 instead of the typical price of $240. Just use promo code Lombardi. You'll get VSiN Pro access to everything you do for an entire year. The daily best bets, the betting splits, the premium analysis, 24/7 video access. But most importantly, right now, our March Madness betting hub with picks for every game of the tournament. Remember to use promo code Lombardi. $199 for 1 year of VSiN Pro access. Sign up today at vsin.com/subscribe. Welcome back. This is the Lombardi Line. Michael Lombardi out in the great state of New Jersey. Femi Abebefe hanging out here in downtown Las Vegas at the Circa Resort and Casino, and joining us now on the Progressive Guest Line as we continue our analysis of the NCAA tournament. The one and only Jonathan Von Tobel, host of VSiN Primetime. Weekdays, check it out, 6 to 9 Eastern time here on VSiN. JVT, good morning. Hope all is well. We'll start with the early game here in Indianapolis, Colorado, and Marquette. Golden Eagles, 4.5-point favorites, total 150. What do you like?
Yeah, I like Marquette here. I laid it with the Golden Eagles. I think Marquette's a little undervalued. It's odd, right? We saw in that first game in the round of 64, the market really moved against them. On our Betting the Bracket show that Sunday, opened 16.5, got all the way down to 14. They ended up getting there. It was touch and go early, but ended up pulling away. And then this Colorado team, guys, you're talking about your third game in 5 days. And some of the things that they do, I think, really play into the hands of Marquette. Namely, this Colorado squad, 254th in the country in offensive turnover rate. Marquette 20th in defensive turnover rate. They like to force, right? A lot of turnovers, get out and run, get easy buckets. Kolek looked pretty comfortable in his first game back with about 18 points. So I think that this is just one where the market was sleeping on Marquette at the beginning of this tournament, and I'm going to bank on the fact that they're still doing that while also having some matchups that work in their favor. So I laid it with them today.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like they were coming, like that first half started slow for Marquette, but then they kind of got their rhythm going, and it looked like they were becoming the better team. And Yale, I mean, Danny Wolf was in foul trouble the whole game against Auburn. He didn't make a big difference, but against San Diego State, he should be a dominant player. You like Yale today?
Yeah, and Michael, really quick before we move to that, I want to add to your point, too. It's not like Marquette was the only team we saw this weekend do that, right? We saw a bunch of big favorites really get off to slow starts in the first half and then have really strong second halves, put their foot on the pedal, and then, of course, pull away to end up covering that game. So I think you could see, I'm not going to count that against them, given what a lot of these big favorites do. And to your point about Yale and San Diego State, I would agree. And for me, I came into this tournament thinking, look, I think San Diego State is one of the most overrated teams in the field. It's a team that is now, guys, 13-20, 13-21 against the spread for the season. Away from home, they have been abysmal against the number. They are 1-6 against the number in their last 7. The market really does think quite highly of San Diego State. I'm just not there. Their offense is not particularly good. Their perimeter offense has not been good all season. They were the worst three-point shooting team in the Mountain West. So for a defensive-oriented Yale team that's got some upside with shooting, can slow this game down and play at their pace as well, causes some variance of the better shooting team. And like you mentioned, Danny Wolf with some versatility there and size. Jaden Ledee might have another big game, but I think overall Yale's got enough to stay inside of a number against what I believe to be one of the most overvalued teams in the NCAA tournament. So played against them with UAB, got there, going to continue to do it here with Yale today.
It's interesting that you say that about San Diego State because you cover this Mountain West Conference. You watch it you've been following it for years now, and you're not in there with the Aztecs who made it all the way to the title game a year ago. What do you think about Utah State then? They're taking on Purdue later on today. Purdue, an 11.5-point favorite, total 149.5. Can Utah State be a little bit more frisky in this game, or is this maybe Purdue just going to be able to overpower them over the course of 40 minutes?
I tend to think that they're going to overpower them a little bit, Femi, but I will say this, and for our, we have our confidence picks over on VSiN Primetime. I used them. We get to play big underdogs for a free roll, right? So if they don't cover, it doesn't count against us, and if they do, we get some bonuses. But I think the world of Danny Sprinkle. Like whatever Danny Sprinkle got out of this squad for Utah State is awesome. And I do think that a coach like that is going to be able to scheme up some stuff here against Purdue that is going to be able to keep them pretty live, keep them inside of the number. The problem is that I would have is, all right, you're going to need big games out of Darius Brown, Ian Martinez, because those are two of your better shooters in that backcourt. If you could take advantage of Purdue the way they play defensively, right, that drop coverage, putting him out in space, that would be Zach Edey, taking care of that soft area of the floor, putting Edey on some perimeter guys and forcing him to kind of float out there and open up the middle of the floor. I think that's where Purdue is going to be weakness, and we saw it a little bit from some of the teams down the stretch. And Wisconsin did it really well against them. So I think that Danny Sprinkle's smart enough with the way that he runs his stuff that he's going to be able to be pretty frisky. But ultimately, where I didn't ultimately get on the play, Femi, was your best player is Great Alcibor, a 6'8" forward that's got to work down low. And I'm not sure how that really helps you out when I think you want to be a little bit more guard-oriented when you're talking about taking down Purdue if you're going to be able to do it.
Before we go on to your NBA picks, on a bigger picture, I know it was only Stetson, but how impressed were you by Connecticut's dominance of that game and their ability to just control it from the start?
And that's really impressive, right? And like you said, it's only Stetson, but Michael, let's go back to what we just mentioned. We saw a lot of these big favorites go out there, get the best shot from a lot of these teams, have small leads at halftime, and then go on to really separate themselves. For UConn, no. Like that's from minute one to the last minute, you are pulling ahead. You are doing what you need to do. You are executing. I think it's wildly impressive, and I'm very interested to see if we're just going to see that effort here again and throughout the tournament once more. Remember, guys, last year they had an average margin of victory, double digits, a season ago on their way to an NCAA tournament championship. So I thought it was impressive. But Michael, I will say, sportsmanship is overrated, and we need to stop this because my guy, Hurley, decided to call off the dogs in the last possession. We were a point away from getting the over, boys. Like, all you need to do, just keep going. Who cares? Don't throw out the clock. They can't stop you. Keep going at them. But other than that, no, I was really impressed with that, even though it was, as you mentioned, just Stetson.
UConn now plus 250, the favorite over at DraftKings. That's a short number, but you watch them play, hard to argue with it here. We're hanging out with Jonathan Von Tobel on the Progressive Guest Line, host of VSiN Primetime weekdays, 6 to 9 Eastern Time here on VSiN. Also, our senior NBA analyst. Let's turn our attention to the association, JVT. You have a play in the Warriors T-Wolves game later on this afternoon/evening. T-Wolves laying 2.5, total 220 here. Is this a good spot to back the Timberwolves, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to get ahead of this a little bit, and there's always some sort of risk here because Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert are questionable to play, guys, so that's always going to be a question of whether or not they're going to be out there. But Anthony Edwards, I think, is going to play. Same with Rudy Gobert. This is a really light schedule for them. We're talking about a stretch here. We're talking about their third of 4 games at home. So they're in a 4-game homestand, and just their second game in 5 days. So they're going to be pretty well rested. When you're talking about Edwards, he's not a guy that misses a ton of time. He was on the injury report last time with this finger injury, and then he still ended up playing. And the numbers for Edwards, guys, since Karl Anthony Towns has been down, have been incredible. He's averaging 29 points, 8 rebounds, and 5.5 assists on 47% shooting from the floor. The guy's been spectacular. And if they both play, it gives them some good size advantage against Golden State. Minnesota's got multiple perimeter defenders to throw at the perimeter of the Golden State Warriors here. So given the scheduling spot, how the Golden State's been playing, the fact that I think that you're going to get the 2 best players out there on the floor, laid 2.5 with Minnesota, I think it probably should close about 3.5, 4 if both of them play. So try to get ahead of the number.
All right, I know you've watched basketball religiously and you've seen a lot. Have you ever seen a player try to block the shot of his own teammate? I mean, when Harden passed it over to the corner to Kawhi and then he ran to try to block the shot. Have you ever seen this before?
No. I mean, I guess his explanation was he was trying to make you kind of bring the mentality up or joke around or something. I kind of get it. I mean, you're on a losing streak, so I think you want to make sure every basket goes in, but it was pretty funny.
Only Harden.
But you like them today, though, against that 76er team that's just waiting for the return of the greatest player of all time. When's that happening?
Well, Kawhi Leonard's going to stay on the Los Angeles Clippers, so I don't know if he's ever coming back to going to the Philadelphia 76ers. But no, I'll put it this way, Michael. As you know, the team's 9-18 straight up and against the spread, essentially, 76ers are since Joel Embiid. But I'll take you back to the last 2 games because I think one of the underrated parts about this kind of scuffling stretch for the Los Angeles Clippers guys is the fact that they've been missing guys, right? Like James Harden was missing time. Terrence Mann missed some time. Paul George missed some time. Kawhi Leonard. Russell Westbrook's been out. And so there's this odd lack of continuity because it's not just one guy that's been out. It's been all these different guys. And you saw in Portland when, at the very least, Harden was off the injury report at the start of that 2-game set. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George played them both. And through the first 3 quarters, they went into the fourth quarter of each of those 2 games with a 20-plus point lead. Problem is, the Clippers are a team that if they know that they're going to win, they're going to pull their guys pretty quickly. And so in both of those fourth quarters, they almost blew some pretty big leads. They covered the first game. They didn't cover the second. They had a negative about 17 or 18 net rating in the fourth quarter of both of those. So this goes to say, I do think they're live to cover 9.5 today, but I don't want to risk the fact that they're going to pull their guys in the fourth quarter. So if I think they're live here, obviously think they would be live and there'd be some value in laying this first half number against Philly and kind of avoid what could be some fourth quarter shenanigans of sitting some guys in a game in which they have a massive lead and then maybe getting this inside of that number. So I'll take the Clippers first half -5.5 here in this spot against Philadelphia.
30 seconds, JVT. Do you still think that the Clippers are going to come out of the West?
Yeah, I think I was telling my buddy this yesterday, Femi, that it's becoming more to me like I'm trying not to stay off, or I'm trying not to get off of my thing, but the Denver Nuggets look so freaking good. But let's give this team the last 3 weeks to get their guys back. Russell Westbrook's coming back on Monday, and let's see if they can start to show some signs of the team that rolled through the entire NBA over the course of like a month and a half, 2 months.
Yeah, they had a really good stretch there, but they've hit a little bit of a rough patch. As we head towards the postseason in less than a month now. Can't wait for the NBA playoffs to get here. He is Jonathan Von Tobel joining us on the Progressive Guest Line. Check him out weekdays, VSiN primetime, 6 to 9 Eastern time. Also, all of the NBA write-ups over at vsin.com as our senior NBA analyst. JVT, good luck with the bets, man. Be well.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, JVT.
Michael, you're not waiting for Embiid to get back, man? He's on
No, why would they bring him back? Seriously, what are they for a play-in against the Celtics? Come on. What are we doing? What are we doing? Get a higher draft pick. I mean, we're the process. We love higher draft picks so we can blow the pick.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
There's never been a better time to have skin in the game with DraftKings Sportsbook because right now we have a VSiN exclusive offer for new DraftKings customers. Earn a $500 bonus bet for every $1,000 you wager. You can earn up to $2,500 worth of bonus bets in your first 3 days on DraftKings. What a deal that is. Don't wait. Download the app now. Use code TLL when you sign up and earn $500 of bonus bets for every $1,000 that you wager now. If only there was stuff to wager on, right? I mean, we got the second round of the NCAA tournament. We got the women's tournament going on. We got the Sweet 16 starting on Thursday. A whole lot of stuff, so make sure you take advantage of that. This is the Lombardi Line. Welcome back.
There is a lot, Femi. I mean,
lot, yeah.
I'm sure you got a lot going. What do you have cooking today? I mean, we got to hear. I mean, you've got. I'm sure you took a tough day yesterday. What do you got cooking for today?
So what we have cooking right now, I have not placed the bet because I'm going to wait because I think we're going to get a better number. But I'm interested in Grand Canyon against Alabama. They're catching 6 right now, but DraftKings actually has a 6.5, and I think the rest of the market's going to follow. So it's one of those situations right now. Like if you like Alabama, you should probably just lay that 6 because I think that's the best that you're going to get. But if you like Grand Canyon, you have the opportunity to wait and see if you want to go ahead and back the Antelopes. If we get a 6.5, I mean, if we ever got a 7, obviously that's even better. But I'm going to wait because there's no point of betting it right now. If there's a 6.5 at DraftKings or 6.5 off the grid somewhere else, you might be able to find a better number here. So I will be backing Grand Canyon, though, at 6 or better. But we're going to wait for that better for a little bit because I just think that Alabama's defense is suspect. And I agree with what the Bear said when we had him on earlier. He doesn't really like betting against Alabama because he thinks that the high variance team, but there's the bad end of the variance. If those shots don't fall, guess what? They're still not going to defend. Alabama plays no defense. Their KenPom numbers defensively are just putrid for a team that is a power conference team. 117th adjusted. When you unadjust it and you just go with the raw points per possession allowed, it's in the 200s. Like Alabama's a bad defensive team, and we saw a little bit of that earlier against Charleston on Friday. So I'm going to go ahead and fade this team. I think Grand Canyon's live to pull off this upset here, Michael. I just do not trust teams that don't defend. Similar to Kentucky and what we saw against Oakland, these teams that struggle to defend, they can get got by anybody in the tournament. I think Grand Canyon has the goods. They have the fan support in Spokane. Give me Grand Canyon plus the points and also a little bit on the money line as well.
Ooh, I like it. If KenPom has that as a 5-point game, if you get that 6.5, you're in pretty good shape above what his number could be. Look, I do think that anytime, if you're going to play this tournament, it comes down to defense and the guards. But, at some point, like what we saw with Kentucky, when you don't shoot well and the other team does, which Grand Canyon could easily do, I think it could be prime for an upset. So, I'm rooting for you, Femi. You have anything else you like out there? Are you thinking about playing the James Madison versus the Dukes?
No,
the Dukes and the Dukes?
I'm going to lay off of that game here. I get James Madison's coming off a heck of a performance. I don't usually like to bet teams off of like really, really good high-end performances there. And also I was not impressed with what I saw from Duke. So I'm just going to let that one pass. One that I am eyeing and one that the market continues to bet is your guy Buzz. The Aggies of Texas A&M, it's down to 9. There was a 10 earlier this morning. It was 9.5 when we started the show. Now it's down to 9 across the board, and even the 9s are getting bet. It wouldn't shock me if we saw it 8.5 in a half hour or so. Texas A&M, I'm not saying that they're a super live dog to pull off the upset, but I think this is going to be a really close game just because we watch Houston defensively. There's not enough we can say about what they do defensively. They are unbelievable on that end of the floor. However, they go through some of those spurts where it's a 3-4 minute scoring drought. And if you do that against a team that has really good guards and is playing well and is confident offensively as of late, it can get a little bit dicey here for the Cougars. So I think Texas A&M can keep this close. I'm not getting the best of the number here. Like I said, there was a 10 earlier this morning. Now it's down to 9. Maybe it goes to 8.5. But I think I'll put a little bit of something on the Aggies here just to keep the game close. I'm not going to bet money line. I'll bet them just to keep this close because I think Houston, a little bit of a rough stretch offensively at times, and it always comes up in some of these tournament games. So I like Texas A&M to stay competitive against Houston.
When you watch their season, A&M has had those moments. I think they had that 5-game losing streak. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Arkansas. They struggled, and then they came out of it, right? They lose to South Carolina. They come out of it in late February, go on a nice run. And then, they get into the tournament, and they got a 10-point lead on Florida, and then they just got cold. And then Florida was able to beat them in the tournament play, and they got into this tournament. But I think they're seasoned, and I think they have the elements of that guard play to make a difference. I think as you gather all the information, and I don't bet, but I listen to everybody, and I listen to everything, and JVT and Bear today, who were great guests, and so I think to me, when you listen to everybody talk about Yale versus San Diego State, and JVT is such a Mountain West guy, right? Yep. And Tim Murray as well. And so they're really behind the Bulldogs of Yale, which tells me that, they've looked at this. KenPom has it as a 5-point game. I don't know if the big man, if Wolf plays well for Yale, I think Yale could be an active play. I mean, look, give Will Hill all the credit in the world. I mean, he picked Yale to upset in the first round, which was an incredible. Now, I know everybody's going to tease him about Mississippi State, but, that's what happens in this world. You miss some, win some. But that's a ballsy pick right there, to make that one. So Yale just didn't beat Auburn because they got lucky. Yale's pretty good, and they play basketball the right way.
Oh, 100% there. And it wasn't just Yale to cover that number. It was Yale outright in that game. That is what he liked there. So he called the shot for Yale to go ahead and beat the Auburn Tigers. I'm trying to look up what the odds were on the money line for that game because, you had to have been getting some pretty big numbers there. It might have been in that 7-1 range or so, Yale against Auburn, because they were catching, I believe, it was like 13.5, maybe even 14 against the Auburn Tigers. A lot of people were excited about Auburn heading into this tournament. Speaking of a big number, people have been scooping up Northwestern here. The 14s are now gone, Michael. We're down to 13.5 pretty much everywhere. There's even a 13 in the market. From a numbers play, I understand it. But then just from one watching UConn play, I just don't know if I want to be the person that's raising their hand saying, I'm going to go ahead and go against the UConn Huskies, the defending national champions.
Well, I think this, a lot of people that bet use Ken Pom, and he has it as a 10-point game. So you're getting a 4-point variance here, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you're saying, well, that's a great number. They kind of, that Florida Atlantic game, Dusty May, great hire by Michigan, by the way, who leaves Florida Atlantic to go to Michigan. That's they kind of wore that game down and dominated in overtime. So, look, I think Northwestern, when you look at their team, right, they lose to Iowa, lose to Michigan State, they beat Minnesota in the last game of the year, and they lose immediately to Wisconsin. So, I'm like, okay, I could get why that. I just think Connecticut's on a different platform than everybody else, and their drive. But 14 is a lot of points. As JVT was complaining about on the show today, all they needed was one more bucket to crash the over for them, and it didn't happen. So, I'm not saying they won't call, but this ability of UConn to focus and to play for their standard, not for their opponent, is really impressive.
And the thing that's impressive about them, they have so many good players. And, obviously, if you're going to be a good team, you need really good players. But it allows them to, if one guy's having an off night, now this guy's having a really good night. They can survive. Because a lot of teams, if your best player or your second best player has an off night in the tournament, you're going home. But UConn can survive that just because they go about 7-8 deep of really quality players that could be maybe the second and third best player on a lot of other teams in the country. So they just have a lot of good players, have a really good coach in Dan Hurley. And, there's a reason why they're plus 250 to cut down the nets in a couple of weeks here, just because they are the defending national champions, and they look even better than they did this time last year when they ran through the tournament a season ago here. I know you said that you had Kentucky in your Final Four. If you could get a bracket redo, because I know a lot of people right now sitting at home tearing up the brackets. If you could get a bracket redo, would you have a different Final Four? Obviously, I'm sure you would. If you had the knowledge of the Kentucky losing, you wouldn't pick Kentucky. Who would you put in your Final Four if you could get a bracket redo? If you got a mulligan, perhaps?
I kind of took a shot with. I thought they would peak. I was on that program of peaking. I had Texas A&M winning the first one. I think they're going to win the second one. I have them beating Houston, but I think they'll run out of gas. To the team that I thought was that Marquette was one of those teams that I think are better than I anticipated because they are healthy in that second half against them. And I think North Carolina, I didn't have them in. Stormy has them in her finals. And they were really, Michigan State's tough, right? Yep. They're not the most talented team this year. They've only won 19 games, but, they have a 10-point lead, and North Carolina didn't flinch. And I love that. I love when you don't flinch and all of a sudden your will takes over the game and you dominate. I think if I had a mulligan on that, I would put North Carolina in my final. And I would have taken out, obviously Kentucky. I have Alabama in my final because I think they can get hot. I'm a little bit like Bear. I felt like you don't want to get in front of them because they can score so easily against teams. So we'll see how that plays out. I had UConn being my national championship because I don't see how these teams can match their toughness with their talent.
Yeah. You look at the West region right now, UNC, not even the favorite. Arizona's the favorite to come out of the West region, plus 150. Carolina, plus 220. As somebody who is invested in Arizona, I watched Carolina. I'm a little concerned. That does it for us here on the Lombardi Line. Michael, enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy the games. For our producer, Elliot Bowman, for Michael Lombardi, the entire crew behind the glass, I'm Femi Abebefe saying good luck with all the bets. The Handle with Matt Brown and Mike Somich is coming up next.